Hey out there in Toyland, my name is Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and like you, I am an action figure collector. But possibly unlike you, I work in the toy industry creating action figures, and also consulting with inventors and helping them get to market. But the point is, I love action figures, and that's why I started this channel, was to try to explain things from the industry standpoint. Now, one of my favorite sites for Star Wars news is Jedi Temple Archives. I love this site. This is not against this site at all. This is actually explaining something and hopefully putting some light on this Tusken Raider review that they recently posted. So in the post, about halfway through, the author says, with all the money they, Hasbro, saved from the reuse parts on this Tusken Raider set, they couldn't have thrown in a few more weapons? It's frustrating. Okay, 100% legitimate point. And again, this is not a video against Jedi Temple Archives. I agree with them. It is frustrating when you get a figure and you feel like, well, wait a minute, did they cheap out? Why not, give me more accessories for my figures? Sounds legitimate, right? The problem with reviews like this, or the issue, is that it's factually incorrect. And that's what I want to explain. As I've mentioned, I've worked in the toy industry. I'm one of those rare kind of collectors that's actually, gotten to live the dream and then, meet your heroes and, help turn toys into reality. A lot of people, therefore, have actually kind of thought that I'm just a shill for the toy industry, but that's completely not true. I'm just explaining how things work because I don't want my fellow fans to be confused. And as I've said, even though some sites tend not to believe me, I am a collector. I mean, this is my office. Every square inch of wall and shelf is filled with action figures. I promise you that. This is not coming from any point of trying to justify or explain things away, but rather I wanted to use this channel to provide clarity so that reviews that are sort of showing frustration, you can understand why these decisions are made and not just look at them in isolation. All right, so let's look back at the review that said, again, with all the money saved from reused parts, they should have thrown in more weapons. Okay, while I agree with you fundamentally from a certain point of view, you could say that this pack would be cool with more weapons. The thing is, you're already, one, getting soft goods and a shitload of deco. Deco is extremely expensive, as are soft goods. So the fact that you're getting 4 figures with a ridiculous amount of deco and soft goods is part of the reason why you're only getting a few accessories. Now, when we were kids, if you wanted to, army build Tusken Raiders, you had to buy a whole bunch of single-carded Tusken Raiders. And the fact that they are differentiating them and making them look from different content, like Book of Boba Fett, etc., yeah, they may not be that different. I mean, I guess they have better legs now than the previous release. But again, a lot of fans like that review are feeling like this isn't enough, that we're being, one accessory per figure. What's the deal with that? But again, one, you have to look at the deco and the soft goods, which I've mentioned. But two, the fundamental issue is understanding how the costs of a figure hit a toy company's financial statement in terms of tooling and the cost of actually producing the figure. And that's where the misconception tends to come around, where people say, oh, they saved on tooling, so we should have gotten more. No, not quite. And let me explain the why, because I think this can alleviate a lot of frustration. Okay, so if you're a Fortune 500 company, you have a P&L, a profit and loss statement. And this basically encompasses all of the factors that go into producing product for consumers. And it looks at the essentially bottom line profit that a SKU, one single item, or an entire toy line are going to make for that company. And because companies are owned by stockholders, these stockholders have requirements that certain margins be hit. Now, the tooling cost of a figure and the actual cost to produce the figure are completely unrelated and separate costs. Now, they do have to keep the P&L in balance, but they hit the P&L in 2 different places. So the tooling cost, that huge capital expense, the $100,000 to create a giant mold, that hits at the end of the P&L after the margin and before the operating profit. When you have a figure that has already been tooled, you've invested that one-time investment, well, you can use that tool to make as many repaints or reissues of this figure as you want, and you don't need to pay for the tool anymore. So you would then offset the cost of the highly tooled figures that you have to invest in with package and redeco executions. That's how you balance out the P&L. So a figure with no tooling or minimal tooling helps alleviate the high cost of a figure that's fully tooled. All right. And usually that is set at the development phase, where figures have slots, full tools, partial tools, package only, redeco, so that way you know how much tooling you need to invest in for a full line, and you're not going to be able to tool every single figure. All right, so as I said, tooling and the cost of the figure hit the P&L in two different places. So let's look at the first place. All right, let's start at the beginning. And this is very deliberately to try to explain away the collective confusion a lot of fans have on costs and what toy companies give us. So the tooling, when you pay for that, it's done. You do have to fork out a lot of money up front, but then you own that tool and can make as many of that shape as you want. You can redeco it, you can offer it as different characters, you could throw soft goods over it to what we call refresh a character, but you're not retooling. The other cost is the actual cost of production. So forget the tool. That's already paid for. That's a capital expense. The actual cost of the product, which is called the X factory, includes the plastic, the paint, the paper, meaning the package, all the elements that go to actually making, like, say, this Batman figure here. And let's say the total cost is, $5 in supplies, material, and labor. That's the X factory cost. That hits the P&L before the margin and operating profit. So that's what we're dealing here, is forget about the tooling. The tooling is a one-time capital expense, and that has almost nothing to do with the physical cost of producing the figure. So a figure that's already tooled is a package or redeco execution. And again, these slots are assigned at the development stage. So you can't just take a figure that is slotted as, say, a package or redeco execution, meaning no tooling, and suddenly give it new parts because no tooling was assigned to this figure, because this was part of an overall line item that was meant to balance the P&L. Maybe it balances out other figures that are highly tooled or fully tooled. All right, so that's one aspect. And then the other is you have an X factory cost requirement. So you can't basically put more into this toy than it can cost. The tooling was already paid for back in 2006 for this particular Tusken Raider set, right? But flash forward to today, and the total cost of, say, all these figures, soft goods, paint, accessories, packaging has to cost, again, let's say $5. The reason they can't put more accessories in is because they've already hit their X factory limit. And that's what's on the P&L. You can't put more into a toy than the target cost that's been assigned by essentially the stockholders who own the company. They say you can make a toy that costs $5 to make, and you need to sell it for $10, so you make a 50% profit margin. And that is the difference between the physical cost and the tooling cost. And I hope this is explained and clarified for people who review toys and enjoy our toys, that seeing a figure that doesn't have tooling doesn't mean that it could just get way more accessories, because you still have to meet the X factory cost of physically producing that toy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. It's the best way to support this channel, and thank you for that. Come back on next time, and always appreciate any suggestions for future videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.